Welcome to the Green Grassroots of Football with me, Andy Glover.
Me, Mark Grinton.
And before we go any further, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Rachel's Bookkeeping, for all of your bookkeeping needs. For this episode, Ben is not with us again. So, hi Ben, wherever you are. I hope you're listening. I hope you're enjoying the show. Okay, so if you were listening 2 weeks ago, you heard that we were discussing challenges that women face in football and how that can affect our girls and our women's team. And we finished our discussing how women's sport was sort of divided by language, wasn't it? So we're just going to pick up from there basically and go on after that. So there was another study I found, Mark, the image problem in women's football by Harris. Now this one is a bit more of an interesting one, and because I think this also still leads to derogatory language and comments. Majority of this was looked at college football. It was in the UK. Majority of college football players continually had to defend their heterosexuality within the spaces and around their football world, because the image of women's football was being solely an activity for lesbians, and that was the sort of perception it was. And it said, and although a number of lesbian women do play, and there's studies by Caldwell in 1999, 2002, and Hargreaves in 1994, and Menesson and Clement in 2003, it must not be overlooked that a lot of heterosexual women play as well. Yeah. And the marginalisation of the experiences of heterosexual female players, it's something that's, I think, can be used against them if they. It's used as a label. Yeah. And you and I both have heard it, and it's not just football, is it? No, it's not. It's I think it's almost any sport.
It's any, without being horrible, it's any sport. Athletes get accused of it. Rugby players, the female rugby players, and to be honest, it's I don't know what.
I think the more
I'm to moderate what I'm just going to say. It has absolutely anybody, and again it's within the male game, their sexual orientation is irrelevant.
Oh, it is, because
it's 100% irrelevant.
It is, and yet I saw a thing on BBC Sport, BBC News, about the first openly gay Scottish footballer finally retires, and he was playing just below the Scottish League 2, so in the Highland leagues. But it was a big thing that he'd finally retired. Yeah. But he was openly gay. It was a big thing that he was an openly gay footballer.
And there's still I think there's one in Holland now, but one or two maybe active gay male players. And again going away from the female thing, but it's irrelevant if the women are gay, whatever their orientation is.
I mean, I don't think it's such a concern in the female game, because did you see the Australian documentary? Yeah, yes, absolutely. But did you see the Australian World Cup documentary? Because obviously the World Cup was held in Australia, and there was a 6 or 8 part documentary about the Mirandas leading up to it. And so it was sort of meeting a lot of them behind the scenes. And some of them have got children, but people like, I think, Sam Kerr met her girlfriend, who I think, if I remember rightly, was either a French or Swedish international player. But they were quite open about it, so a lot of them don't mind. But certainly for younger players who are struggling with that, and don't want to necessarily be open about their sexuality, it's a concern. But also for any women who just get abused by it. It's horrible, it's nasty.
And get accused of it, and it's
a nasty thing for anybody, and not just women, but men as well.
Yeah,
it's just a nasty form of abuse. I mean, any form of abuse is nasty, but it's one of the. I think, if I remember rightly, it's one of the protected characteristics of discrimination and hate. Is sexuality, as an age, race, sexuality is another one.
It said, I think it's something. It has to be done correctly, and I think a lot. I put my hands up to a lot of the women, the senior game, who who do say who they're married to and stuff like that, I think there's fair shake to them. And they're role models in certain ways, and and that is how it should be. And they've got nothing to hide or nothing to be ashamed of. And it's in some ways it's a way, I think, where the women's game is miles ahead of the men's game.
Yes.
Within it, because it is accepted, but it is also it's irrelevant. I said I wouldn't know the stats. I think the stats would it's an irrelevant stat, but I'm sure it.
Although I will say it's not the sole use of men. I've heard a lot of women also use it as derogatory comments against women. Because there's still that pervading sense that being gay, being lesbian, whatever, is something to be used as to be beaten with in that sense. Whether you're a male using it as a term of abuse or a female using it as a term of abuse, I have heard it from
unfortunately, you could go totally off subject.
Oh, I know.
With this,
we have done in the past. We're trying not to. We're limited by time. We're trying not to.
It's
perhaps a subject for another podcast.
Yeah.
But what you go on? Say, go a little bit off topic.
If you go with women and stuff, without causing offence, stuff. Religion is strongly behind. Obviously, it
can be absolutely. Although one of the people I've heard is not religious at all. It's just it's just a way of abusing people.
And it's just.
But there is another one. Absolutely, it's another form that it can be. Yeah. But at the same time, religious intolerance can also be used against female players and also male players, obviously. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll tell you what. No, you've opened the door to religion. Yeah. It isn't actually on my list, but exactly that. Female players of, say, Islamic female players who wear headscarves. I've heard them being abused and all that sort of thing. So there's another one there. The sort of thing they have to face.
They face a load. And the girl, I said, it is amazing. The Bristol, as we said, it's the
Bristol Girls League.
And the amount of girls that are playing and the expansion of it, and it is becoming more and more accepted. We're my under 10 girls, we've played boys teams now. Granted, we play a year. When we've played them, we played the year below, because again, you can't argue the physicality
no, but I've suggested this to our under 8s manager about perhaps playing your team as well, that sort of thing, and he's quite open to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's exactly that. Sorry, the Mark's team is under 10s. So our under 8s manager. But yeah.
So we played the under 9s. I've had a request from the under 6s boys who wants to play our under 7 girls. So we'll try and do that. And it's more and more accepted. It's not, I think, at that age, and hopefully as a club, that is something which we've got to build. That both.
Because that educates them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That educates everybody, not just the players, but the fans, the fans and the spectators.
It is education, and you've hit the nail on the head. With a lot of it, is education. I said I'm certainly learning my education. I think, like we said with the last time with the coloured shorts, I was certainly educated on that. No, you're spot on. They're correct. It's how quick and accepting. It's difficult. It's certainly at grassroots. I said it's not slating people, but again, we're of a certain age, and I would say our demographic and the demographic of slightly older of a generation is how they're set. How much they're set in their ways is how long it will take to change.
Yes.
If you've got people at the top of clubs, in grassroots clubs, they've got the experience, blah, 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 gentlemen in their late 50s, early 60s, maybe even older in some clubs. They've done it for a certain way for what they've been used to for the last 30, 40 years. How accepting are them of having female? And it said, you say with grass, it said it's when you listen, I think, going on, it said the cricket, MCC. again, I could be totally wrong. It's either last year or it might not have happened that they accept women in the club.
Yes, yes. And I think there's a couple of golf
St.
clubs.
Andrews?
A couple of golf clubs, and one of them only opened it up because they weren't allowed. They were told you're no longer having opens here because you don't allow women in the club, and they were like, oh, in that case, yeah, we'll allow women here because we want to be part of the open.
And imagine how welcome they must feel in that club.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, and so until you're not wanting to drive the experience out, but they've got to be more accepting of, and again within our club, I said the role I do had a go. I still think it probably should be a female doing it. And it's because I'm not, and not, it's you don't realise all the things, and it's and they have more power. I said Kelsey, who does our women, is amazing, and rightly she will have a go at me at some things that happen, and and I hear the thing and you think, well, actually she is right here. You have to consider. I said my daughter said she's 10 now, so there'll be things that will happen, and I hope she carries on playing for whatever she wants to do, as long as she wants to, and feels happy doing that. And it's the same with all the girls and the club, and it's the environment is changing as well, certainly within the grassroots. I said it's developing and stuff, but what I'm personally seeing in grassroots is there's more males coming into the game and are slightly changing how it's played, and and whether that's a negative or I don't know. But again, and how with the female game, and I've heard the ones to be successful, when you look at the Lionesses and stuff like that, they always say the opportunities are fantastic now, but they played in boys' teams. I know, I have been told within a certain FA, they encourage their better players to play in boys' teams.
Yeah.
Now.
And that's going. I was listening to a podcast by the FA recently that's going to be part of their study for the next 4 years. The sort of the future of grassroots football over the next 4 years. That's going to be part of their study. One of the parts, also playing up, playing down, all the other things. But that's one of the things they'll be looking at the advantages of that in terms of turning out future Lionesses. As well. So
how that will then develop the girls' game and as a whole at grassroots,
I doubt it will. What that will do is that will produce the future Lionesses and sod the rest of the girls.
So is that then that
basically like academies?
And is that elitist?
Of course it is. Sod the rest of the girls' teams. We just want our Lionesses. That's what we're actually looking for. It's not about grassroots football. It's about can we find the future England players. So
I mean, so and you hear the Lionesses, we do get the opportunity to play girls, but okay, if the thinking is, if you've got to be successful, you've got to play with the boys' teams. That will stunt the growth. It just will.
All right. So another study: the inequality of sport. Women are lesser than men, by Hansen. So another American study. Women make up almost 50% of all sports participation. So not football, but sports participation. In 1989, female sport represented between 3 and 5% of all sporting media coverage. That was a study by Alpa. 10 years later, in 1999, that figure had only gone up to 8%. Even after the Women's World Cup, which the USA had actually won, women did not even constitute a tenth of the media coverage in sport, even though half of them did it. I mean, and I think I know that's America, but I know, and it is improving. The BBC are showing football and so on and so forth, but you have to argue that it's still a major issue here, isn't it? Because although that's America, you'd have to argue that roughly 50% of sports participation in this country is female.
I would have thought so.
But how much of that is
And I
on
think,
television?
is it the last Olympics there was more women than men for the first ever time?
Yeah, so oops, that would surprise me.
I think that was the statistic. And I mean, I think, again, they portray that they're showing more women's football and more women's sport, and to a degree they are. As I said, it was just in getting a drink in there, and they've got the women, the men's FA Cup game between who's playing, to be honest, I think Tottenham versus Burnley or whoever it is. But they were also, you were able to watch on the BBC the second qualifying game or the first qualifying game. You wouldn't get that in the women's.
No, of course not. And I'll tell you what, there's another study here, and I think that kind of links into this which is the impact on the media on gender inequality within sport by Trolan. There's numerous studies which are focused on the underrepresentation of women athletes, such as Eastman and Billings in 2000, Vincent, Johnson, Imwald and Massey in 2003, and Keane in 2007, which states that the media continually diminishes the accomplishments of women's sports and athletes in such a way that the general public is unaware of the number of women athletes and their accomplishments. Essentially, the media is an institution that preserves the power of men over women, which is something that Hargreaves said in 1994. One of the most heavily cited papers illustrating the concept of biased reporting was by Bottiglier and San Giovanni in 1983, who analysed Sports Illustrated covers over a period of 34 years. The authors found that sportswomen represented less than 5% of all the covers, and that these women engaged in socially acceptable sports, those that did. These findings are still prevalent today in many sports magazines and the sports pages of newspapers. This research highlighted the reinforcement and portrayal of stereotypical feminine images of athletes and the idea of what is socially acceptable in women's sports. The idea of socially acceptable sports was articulated as the idea that there were certain specific sports acceptable for men and women. Sports that were generally specific for men were contact sports, such as football, rugby, and these types of sports consisted of the masculine characteristics of danger, risk, strength, endurance, and violence, while for women, it was sports which emphasised grace, aesthetic appeal, and were considered acceptable for the media coverage. And according to a report by Vincent in 2004, a recurring theme within the symbiotic relationship of sport and media was the idea that the media have perpetuated a reward system for women athletes who conform to gender hierarchy, receiving more coverage than those who don't. So basically what they're saying is, if you do the nice, graceful, lovely sports, we'll put you on telly, we'll put you on the covers. If you do rugby, you're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to show you. And arguably, I think that's true. You can't deny that. How often do you see women's rugby on television?
I think Sky are helping.
They are, but when? Now.
I watched now. I mean, 10 years ago, no. I think now it is. I think in today's world. Again, I don't know the figures.
Yeah, but it's part of that because. Excuse me, Sky have got 10 sports channels to fill.
Yeah, there is. But again, I think with the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, to a degree, I don't know what they pay them. Obviously don't know what they pay. But I would say I probably do see more women's physical games than unfortunately you don't see, say, netball. When was the last time netball was on the BBC?
No, but it is on Sky.
Again, it is on Sky. Yeah.
So those channels. But what they're saying is those sports that women are traditionally played, will get more coverage and will more likely to be gracing the covers of magazines because it's aesthetically appealing, especially the feminine appeal ones, such as gymnastics or maybe even swimming or something like that. I don't know.
But again, I think it's
as opposed to football or rugby, although the Lionesses have certainly turned that on its head. They've turned that on its head certainly since this report came out. This report is a few years old now, and within this country they certainly have.
And you look at obviously the last two it's a very small thing you look at it because it's changed a bit. But the last 2 winners of the BBC Sports Personality have been Lionesses in Beth Mead and Mary Earps.
Yes.
And Mary Earps doesn't even play in a glamorous position, playing in goal.
No.
So, I mean, she's amazing what she does, and everybody involved. And so, in that aspect, I mean, the Lionesses have been fantastic.
They've done a lot, I think, for the media coverage, haven't they?
They've pushed it on. I mean, you look at, say, the women's cricket.
Okay, before you go on, what if England had lost in the group stages in the Euros and the World Cup? Where would be now?
I think it would have grown, but not to the degree.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have got the success.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's not. As what I'm saying is, it's not the media and the power brokers who push this. It's the women who push this themselves.
Yeah. No, because again, and again, you'll look at the FA and any business. The thing is money and success, isn't it? I mean, money is the big thing, and if
was it Infantino. The doors are open. You just have to push your way through them. And what a stupid thing to say.
Yeah.
Push your way through the doors, really.
It's money that sells. I mean, and it's weird. I mean, again, you can speak to, I think one of the person who drives a lot of the stuff here, who's our sponsor in Rachel. I think one thing that really annoys her more than anything is when she gets asked, "Oh, so you got into football after the Euros then?" And Rachel's loved her football for years and years and years. So that is, again, it's just attitudes. I said you can't argue that the Euros and the World Cup have pushed it, but it would do the same with the boys. When the men do well at Fry's, and I'm sure at most grassroots clubs, you hear of uptake in people interested.
Yes.
And obviously with the girl, when you're starting at such a low base, so it's expanding at such a high level, of course more people will be interested, and hopefully that's when things start changing. But again, without knowing the fact, unfortunately I don't know the facts, how many senior people, or within Fry's and grassroots clubs throughout the country, if you just went grassroots clubs, how many women are on the committees of grassroots football clubs?
Yeah.
And again, I don't. All I know is here, and we have one.
On the main committee?
On the main committee, we have none.
On the main committee, the executive, there's 6 members, none.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the rest are sort of, we have some women on in terms of the roles, but arguably,
we've got 2 now involved.
But arguably, the main committee roles are the 6 roles.
Yeah.
None.
And how many clubs are in the same position as? And I think we're quite a progressive club in a lot of ways.
Yeah. True.
So how many grassroots clubs? And then again, if there's anybody from the FA, please let me know. How many of your senior positions are held by women?
I guarantee you, majority of the welfare positions are women. I know the Somerset FA, their welfare officer is a woman. But you know what? Even that almost sits in a cliche.
Yeah.
A woman is the safeguarding officer. You know, the safeguarding.
I must admit, Somerset, there's 2, because I was fortunate enough.
Yeah, there's a few at Somerset. They are good.
Yeah.
But it is almost a bit of a cliche that the safeguarding officer is a woman.
Yeah.
And you know, as opposed to say referee development or you know. So yeah.
But yeah, it'd be interesting at George's how many senior. I don't know, and so I could be doing them injustice, and it could all be women. Who knows? Yeah. I don't think it is.
Okay, let's move on to some celebrities.
Yeah.
And in the news very recently, a certain ex-Bristol Rovers manager, Mr. Jerry Barton, who said, "Come on, let's be serious. It's a completely different game. If you don't accept that, we'll always see things differently. The women's game is thriving, fantastic to see. I cannot take a thing they say serious in the men's arena.
Yeah.
Any man who sits and engages with them in this regard is sold out.
Yeah, and he used language that was a bit more fruity than that.
Any man who listens to women's commentary or co-coms needs their heads testing.
Yeah.
And he said, you cannot watch a game now without hearing the nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, he also says that women football pundits are hired to tick boxes.
Yeah.
And it's part of a woke agenda.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've listened.
I'm glad he's in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Or is it 19th
it's
century?
It's weird because I've watched I said to you he did an interview with Piers Morgan.
Well, that's where he said the woke agenda bit.
Yeah. He mentioned that quite a bit, and he was trying to defend himself, saying that they should be on a justification. And then he was going on about, well, they've never played the game, blah blah. And then bizarrely they said, well, John Mott and all these Barry Davis, all these male commentators who've never played the game, and he then got himself. He was trying to backtrack it, and it was weird that his arguments in case. Bianca Westwood was there, who's obviously been with Sky for years and years and years, and she's an experience. And he said it was weird. He said, "Well, this isn't anything to do with you, Bianca. I've known you for a long time. I know the work that you've put in. You've earned the rights." And they were saying, "Well, you said it's all women. In your thing was all." And Bianca was obviously a woman, and it was backtracked because again, I think Joey Barton is a very intelligent man. When you listen to some of the stuff, he can be being a thug and stuff like that because he's acted like a numpty at times. But he's an actor, intelligent. If he listens to this, I'm gonna get. I haven't got the money to pay you, Joey. If you think I'm gonna, so I won't say anything.
As a player, as a player, he can be a bit
And.
Sorry, not a thug. He's the enforcer.
Yeah, he's the enforcer. That's
the word you want to use.
And it was being, but in this incident, he hadn't thought it through, and his arguments, unfortunately, like I think a lot of blokes, like we said, have been and being all that. When it gets broken down to, haven't got a case. It's irrelevant. I mean, it's like so you're doing the commentators. You could disagree with any commentator when they've made comments, and he was going because I think there was a goal or something that had been scored, and he said there was a female co-commentator who said, "Oh, he's hit it through the laces," and he goes, "If you'd have known anything about football, you'd have known he'd use the inside of the foot." Well, I'm sorry, I've seen the same. It's when you're elaborating the story and being a journalist. Again, I don't do any of that. But she might not make... It doesn't... But it's totally irrelevant. To say that person... Again, he wouldn't name any of the female commentators he had an issue with. No. Because I presume he knows he'd get into a lot of trouble for that. But it was the generalisation. And I think he wouldn't ever accept... Where potentially he's... Well, I think he was trying to come from... is that whoever's on the, if say you're the main presenter, I don't know, doing the FA Cup final, doing the World Cup, whatever, you've earned your right to get there. I think it doesn't matter if it's whoever it is. If you've done all your way, all the way through, it doesn't matter if you've played the game or whatever, but you are the best commentator, whether male or female, you get that job. Now, I think in his roundabout idiotic way, the way is what he was trying to... He was almost saying, where he's saying it's the tick box, is okay, well, we've got 6 Premier League games, we're going to have 3 female commentators.
Yeah.
And he said it was taken away from males who had done their time to get there. But like Bianca Westwood, he said, well, I've done the 10 years. I've done the hard work that And he said, yeah, it's nothing to do... So I think he's... Basically what he wanted to say, should have said, was, it's on experience.
Yeah.
And,
But he just said women.
And he just said, and all women. And then he's decided he was going to stick to his guns on this.
That's what he then doubled down. That was the problem. He then doubled down.
And he kept going. And then he was trying to backtrack, because obviously at Rovers, where I think I said it's certainly a big part of it. I'm pretty sure it's where it started. Her game 2 came from, and he goes, and we were a big fan. And it's great to see female, and he was trying, and it's like, well, but then they've got as much right. It said Bianca Westwood and all the female. Alex Scott. Again, it was weird watching the interview. I don't know. I said I don't know the backstory, but it did seem like they wanted him to slag Alex Scott off, and he refused to do that. But Alex Scott has earned her right. She's done X, Y, Z. She's played for, she knows football. I think she's got a degree in media studies, they said. So why has she not got the right to comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's, but again, unfortunately, it's within a certain demographic that it's and I'm sure I don't know Joey Barton, so is it hard? But it's difficult. But I would imagine maybe people have the say of a certain ilk of young men or men, or the lads. It's a lads, and football has always been.
It's tribal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you 3 more then. So, on an evening with Kevin Keegan, OBE, in Bristol, he said about women commentators, I'm not as keen, I've got to be honest, and it may not be a view shared. I don't like to listen to ladies talk about the England men's team at the match because I don't think it's the same experience. I have a problem with that. The presenters we have now, some of the girls are so good, they're better than the guys. It's a great time for the ladies, but if I see an England lady footballer saying about England against Scotland at Wembley, and she's saying, if I'd have been in that position, I'd have done this, I don't think it's quite the same. Doesn't cross over that way. You've got John Terry, who in 2018, during the World Cup match between Portugal and Morocco, wrote on Instagram, having to watch this game with no volume, which people interpreted as a dig at female commentator Vicky Sparks, who became the first female commentator at a men's World Cup match. And then Piers Morgan, I think it was during the Women's World Cup final, posted on X, seemed to be a lot of very over-emotional women on here right now. Calm down, it's only a game of football. Crying with laughter emoji. Now, in all 3 cases, I think the big issue for a lot of people is the fact that they have got a lot of followers and they influence a lot of people. And the same with Joey Barton as well, to some degree. It's not just it's not so much the fact of what they're saying; it's the fact that they have a lot of reach, and it's that influence, isn't it?
And it's the missus would love it if Joey decided to sue. But it's weird. All these comments came out from Joey Barton not long after he got sacked from Bristol Rovers. So again, it gives him a lot of media attention. It's given him a lot of publicity, and you go, like you said, with blokes going with a bit of attention, and unfortunately, I think a lot of men do like to have whether controversy or stuff like that is.
Well, I mean, this is it. I mean, you've got someone like Emma Hayes. She's responded by saying, I don't expect any individual personality to understand people like his privilege. You have to see the scores of women on the internet, whether presenter, coach or player, to realise we are routinely used to dealing with systemic misogyny, bullying and behaviour, which is pretty normal for the large part of the football public. Yeah. And that's what they have to deal with. This is what we've sort of covered in these sort of 2 pods. So,
And like I said, unfortunately they do.
But I don't want to get into the rights or wrongs of what they said, but it's for me, a lot of it is just the fact that how big their reach is.
Yeah, they do have a big reach. They do have a lot of publicity from it. I said, I think, it all, in some ways, it highlights. It might do the women's game and women a favour in the sense that it highlights when they say, we have to deal with this. No, you don't. That doesn't happen. Blah blah blah. Well, actually, there you go. And this is somebody who's got this reach and got this, is saying stuff like this. So, it unfortunately, it is something that happens. And it drives us in. My daughter, 10 years old, I think she will still be, if she's playing football when she's 18, 20, at whatever level, she probably will still be facing that.
Yeah, but also, like I said, there'll be people who listen to that, or Kevin Keegan was England manager, so a lot of people will respect that and will listen to what he's saying and go, I agree with that because Kevin Keegan said that, or John Terry. I agree with him because he was England captain. Yeah. So totally agree with that. Or Bristol Rovers fans because he was the Bristol Rovers manager, or or whoever, or even Piers Morgan. I'm a massive fan of Piers Morgan, so I agree with what he's saying. Because so I think that is the problem. It's not even so much whether it's what they're saying per se, it's the fact they have such a following, and it can you hear of sort of social media pylons. That's the sometimes they may not realise that that's what it can induce. So all right, we're approaching the end. Got sort of coming into the last sort of 5 minutes or so. So I'll come up with. I've got 10 successes here, either individual or in the game. So I'll go through them and then we'll sort of wrap up. So 1981. Elizabeth Forsdick became a Class 1 referee, and in the same year she became the first female official in the history of the FA Cup when she acted as an assistant referee during a third round qualifying game. England's Football League has actually used female officials since 1991, when Wendy Toms served as a reserve official for the old third division, what's that, League 2 now. Toms later worked as an assistant referee in both the Football League and the Premier League, and also refereed matches in non-league football such as the Conference, starting in 1996. In 2000, she was the assistant official in the Football League Cup final at Wembley between Leicester City and Tranmere Rovers. In 2002, the FA revealed that football had become the top participation sport for women and girls in England. That's over 20 years now. And I think it still is. It hasn't dipped out of being the top one. Amy Fern was the first woman to referee in the Men's Football League on the 9th of February 2010. So you know that it's one at Burnley Fulham this year. That was the Premier League. Amy Fern did it in 2010 and the Men's FA Cup first round in 2013. She also took charge of the Women's FA Cup final in 2004 and 2015 and was a regular on the FIFA list from 2002 onwards. In 2010, the Women's Super League was established, although Sky and BBC would take 10 years to broadcast the games on their channels. 10 years. At the 2012 London Olympics, 70,000 spectators filled Wembley Stadium as Team GB beat Brazil.
They did.
So that was a good one. In 2022, England women won the Euros, and it was the first time women's football stopped the 10 o'clock news. So there's a notable little win. December the 1st, 2022, French referee Stéphanie Frappart and her assistants Brazil's Nusa Bach and Mexico's Karen Diaz adjudicated the match between Germany and Costa Rica at the Men's World Cup in Qatar. They were the first ones to do that. 5th of July 2023, Hannah Dingley made history by being named the new caretaker head coach at Forest Green Rovers, becoming the first woman to manage a professional men's team in England. She joined the club in 2019 and was the academy manager and was the only woman in charge of a men's English Football League academy. And in her time at Forest Green, Hannah also managed the men's academy and initiated the launch of the club's girls' academy as well. And then final success here, Saturday 23rd December 2023, Rebecca Welsh controlled Burnley's 2-0 win at Fulham in the English Premier League. And that was the first female referee that the Premier League has had. So yes, she wasn't the first to referee the men's sort of top flight games, but first in the Premier League. So there's 10 successes. So I mean,
they're successes, but they should be the norm.
It should be the norm, but they're there, and again, I mean, it's 10 years for Sky or BBC to show a Super League game.
Scandalous.
It's poor.
You go with Rebecca, and what? Again, slightly off. You go off the thing with what the discrimination, and that you think men and women are equal. Blah blah blah. Going all the way back.
I mean, laws of the game are laws of the game.
Yeah, and all this is all equal. There's the discrimination, obviously, in there's all sorts of discrimination. There was Rebecca Welsh. Unfortunately, I don't know the gentleman's name. There was the second black ref since Rene, over the ref.
Oh yeah.
So the discrimination in the games again. Why is it only the second black referee in the Premier League and the first female referee? It was either the same weekend or one was at the weekend after or something. It was over the Christmas period. It happened. So in the female the discriminate, and unfortunately, the game is still being run. And like we've even said at Fry's, like I said, you could go to the thing by men, white men,
white men.
Yeah.
By the way, listeners, in case you're not sure,
we're
two old white men.
and again, this podcast has been done by two old white men.
But we'd like to think we're a little bit more progressive.
So,
and we're so progressive that we've got a younger white man who's not here tonight, but he is part of it.
So
but
that is, and maybe people can draw their own conclusion. Listeners, you can draw your own conclusions from that. Is, will the big changes, and it's the norm?
I'd like to think it would be the norm by the time, because my granddaughter plays for me in the under-8s. I only have one female coach as part of my team. I think you've got, is it one or two within your setup?
1 or 2, yeah.
I'd like to think that by the time my granddaughter reaches an age where she can play as a woman, if she got that far to play professionally, that it would be the norm. And we're talking 10 years now. I don't think it would.
I don't think it would.
But I would like to hope it could be. But the fact that I said there it took 10 years for Sky and BBC just to show a women's Super League shows that was 10. However, the advances we've made since the Euros, England women the Euros, have been quite quick. So maybe now it will, like the fact that, I know it's a completely different thing, but we flew for the first time in 1908 or 05 and got to the moon 60 years later. So, it suddenly speeds up. So hopefully...
It does, and hopefully it will. But unfortunately, and it's not how slow it can be, I think Rennie was 20, 30 years ago. Second...
Just the second
so
one, And there's only, even now, I've only named... is it 2 or is it 3? I think it was 3 female referees, and the other one who's not named there was the one who got Keys and Gray sacked from Sky for their comments.
And it's
ridiculous.
That just proves how far there is still to go.
Shan Massey,
yes.
Richard Keys and Andy Gray. So if you want to find out about them, why they were sacked from Sky, that was off-air comments about her.
Yeah. And so it's...
She was assistant ref at the time, wasn't she?
And again, they are white men of a certain age.
Old white men?
Old white men.
Yes.
And that's, unfortunately, what football is generally...
It's still run by old white men, yes, absolutely. Without blowing our own trumpets, I would like to think that through this pod and the things we've discussed, we do try and... Not change. So. I don't think we can change it, but we try and promote it for anyone who's listening as much as we can. And also, you and I certainly here try and promote change, and Ben as well. Yeah. Try and promote change. Excuse me. Try and promote change.
And we do, and
push forward change as much as we can.
We are still being educated.
But we are just one small club.
Yeah.
And I'd hope that the other clubs are being as progressive as we are.
I think a lot of them are, but again here.
But you don't know
so
that.
If anybody's listening from the Fry's community, certainly women, definitely women, and you want to be involved and be part of our executive committee,
yes,
our AGM,
well, for start, contact us. Well, for start, contact us, and we can give you the details. Will follow. The details will follow that. If you're interested in getting part of the committee, then contact. We'll put your name forward. Similarly, if any women are interested in getting involved in adult football and helping, I know that Kelsey is still looking.
We're still needing an assistant manager desperately.
Absolutely. So there's lots of things that are required, and if you want to get involved, there is always help required.
Yeah.
I think we're there. Any final part? I mean, we ended on some positives there. We ended on good positives.
And it is going in the right direction. It's a long way to go. And please, if you any female who's listening, get involved. Treat us, get it sorted, because it's
take over from us.
Yeah, and that, I mean,
you can take over we'll we
and
don't mind doing
and you would do a lot better job.
Yes. And on that note, I'll say goodnight. So, Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, listeners. And good night.
Thank you, listeners, and we'll tune in next time. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, then please email us your questions, comments, random thoughts, anything you want to share with us at greengrassroots@gmail.com. You can contact Mark and Andy through X at Fry Club JFC or Ben at Red Falcon JFC, on Facebook via Fry Club Junior FC or Red Falcon Sport. The Fry Club JFC website is www.fryclubjfc.co.uk, and the Red Falcon Insta page is at Red Falcon JFC. You could also type out a fantastic review on Apple Podcasts or give us 5 stars on Spotify. You've been listening to a We Haven't Got a Clue What We're Doing production, produced and edited by Andy Glover.